Well, as you know, it's all set for another edition of the Business Advocate on Ghana Television. Good evening. Welcome to the program tonight. And we're taking a look at the creation of a national green infrastructure development policy in Ghana. That is our topic for this evening. And I believe by the time we get over to the end of the program, you understand indeed why we need that policy and the benefit thereof that will be accrued from that policy and related matters. My guest, before I introduce them, let me tell you something about the background of the discussion. All over the world, formal green areas managed primarily for the decorative, horticultural, or recreational value have very significant ecological value. They protect biodiversity and preserve essential ecological functions while serving as a place for recreation, tourist attractions and destinations, as well as civic management. Luckily enough, as a country, Ghana possesses both vegetation and climatic conditions that have a high potential for the development of parks and gardens, which are essential incentive for the promotion of tourism. Flowers, parks, rainforests, botanical gardens, and urban green space provide valuable natural habitats for all forms of wildlife and medicinal plants. In addition, Ghana has both academic and non-academic institutions that have specialized in the training of personnel in various aspects of the horticultural value chain. Unfortunately, though, it appears there is an absence of a systematic approach to integrate the expertise of this vast human resource in horticulture with our natural climate and vegetation, and thus denying the country of the immense economic opportunities to create vast green jobs, not only in the parks and garden industry, but also the wider tourism and hospitality industries as well. Tonight, Business Advocates will examine Ghana's greenery efforts and consider the reaction by the Ghana Tourism Federation, GHATOF, to help bring about the development of a comprehensive national green infrastructure policy with a corresponding implementation strategy that many believe should reduce the drift towards the creation of a concrete jungle, especially in our cities. The program is brought to you by the Busek Fund in the collaboration of the GBC and Ghana Journalists Association. We're back after this break. Don't go away. Welcome back, and you on Business Advocates, 28th day of January 2016. We're discussing the creation of a national green infrastructure development policy for Ghana. My guest on my immediate right, I have Mr. Ishmael Ni Brown, Director, Department of Parks and Gardens. Good evening, sir. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Then after Mr. Ishmael Ni Brown, I have Mr. Ben Anani Insia, who is the Events Manager, Ghana Tourism Authority. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, one more time. Then after Ben, I have Mr. Joseph Nyakun of the Ghana Tourism Federation, GHATOF. Good evening, welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Nice right ahead of me, I have Mr. Mohammed Alasan, Principal Town Planning Officer, Town and Country Planning Department. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you for
wonderful, great. Gentlemen, let's start this way. And before, let me introduce our text and WhatsApp line to you once again. Is 0261 783382. Number again is 0261 783382. Welcome aboard tonight. And let's look at the, for the benefit of our viewers, down to the ground explanation of green infrastructure. What do we mean when we talk about green infrastructure?
Okay, can I start?
You can start.
Thank you. Welcome to the studio.
Yeah, great. Good to have you here.
I would want to define green infrastructure as it refers to the combination of structures, positions, connectivity, and types of green spaces, which together enable delivery of multiple benefits to society. And this comes in the area of goods and services.
Wow.
Yes. So basically, that is the definition of green infrastructure.
Can you go over that again? A bit, part of the definition sounded a bit technical. So
okay, green infrastructure refers to the combined structure, position, connectivity, and types of green spaces, which together enable delivery of multiple benefits as goods and services.
I see. I see. Any addition from any of you gentlemen? Green infrastructure. We want the people watching us, our viewers, to appreciate, the discussion, so that they will not be, isolated. So once they understand what green infrastructure means, it's very easy for them to, come along with us. Any more, or would you go ahead?
Well, I will thought that green infrastructure, especially in the area where you're coming from, tourism, will involve a natural vegetation. Either natural or man-made vegetation that is greenery in structure. In simple definition, that's the way I'll put it.
I see. Now, we don't live in isolation. You realize that in Africa, a country like Kenya, which has proven that a well-preserved landscapes are useful beyond aesthetic purposes alone. And we are told that Kenya has built a vast and profitable tourism industry, both around man-made and natural botanical attractions. The dividend is that Kenya currently exports natural flowers to Europe and earns good foreign exchange. Now, for us, what is preventing Ghana from embarking on such a venture?
Well, if I may come in, Kenya has in the past and currently identified tourism as their first prime industry. It's a priority industry.
So priority comes here. Priority is key.
Key.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
So they devote resources to develop that industry. Just as in the past we had cocoa and devoted all our resources to. Now, in so doing, they needed to develop the landscape. They needed to develop the vegetation. They needed to develop the infrastructure, academic-wise, training-wise, the hospitality facilities, accommodation-wise. So yes, Kenya has done so much in devoting money to develop natural infrastructure, man-made infrastructure, to promote that industry. And part of it is the development of horticultural products. Some for local consumption, others for export. So if we want to develop that industry, we have to identify it as a priority industry and devote resources to it so that we can be where Kenya is, if not more.
I see. From Joseph's submission, it's about priority. But does any of you share any reason why we are where we are? I mean, we have the land, everything. So why aren't we looking to that direction? It's to widen up that space and also make some money. What has delayed us besides our priority?
If I may come in, I think the whole issue has to do with the mindset of the individuals. I always say that we, the technocrats or the elites in society, we are the cause of this country's woes. Because you and I, we do go out there. When we go to Europe, what do we see? We see the best practices.
That's right.
But when we come back home, we don't want to implement them. So that is where the problem is. I believe that when we go out there, we are given the opportunity to see the best things. When we come home, we should be able to bring on board some of these good things. But we come here and the priority change. Like he said, the priorities change. For instance, Australia realized that they had a problem. It's an island. So what do? They use education as a priority to showcase their country. And I can tell you that Australia uses education to rope in so much money for their country. So like he said, if we as a country we want to make tourism, for that matter, the green infrastructure as a priority, we can go ahead. So it's all about we as planners and how we set our priorities.
I see. Oh, you want to come in here, Joseph?
Yes, additionally, Kenya the vegetation of Kenya is mostly savanna. And sometimes very, very dry, so they go beyond to Tanzania, to Uganda, and others. We have more or less a rainforest vegetation. So the climatic conditions are not the same. But that apart, we also identified crops as our priority area, and that's why we went in for cocoa. Kenya hasn't got that. They are more in for that like sort of open grazing facility. So they capitalize using what nature has given them. As a result, they've been able to have the infrastructure properly laid out for that industry that they identified. Over here, if we had also concentrated on using what nature has given us, the forest, and maximize the use of the forest products, maybe we are not in ecotourism like Kenya is, but we could have been better in the area of choice. It's all a question of what is available, what is readily available to us, how do you identify what is available and invest in it so that you have priority advantage, productive advantage over the others. Kenya is touristic, Ghana is agricultural, but we can do better than what we are doing.
Okay, wonderful.
You know, it's not for nothing that we're calling it green infrastructure.
That's right.
Normally, when we think about infrastructure, we're looking at railways, power supplies, and so on. It's the same amount of attention that we should pay to building good roads. We should pay or focus the equal amount of attention on having the green spaces developed.
Fantastic.
Why do you think God put Adam in a garden? You see what I'm saying? And if we accept that the normal life or the normal environment where we should live should have planned, well-manicured lawns and open spaces for all kinds of activities, parks that you must have, you can go to, and so on and so on and so on. Then we structure our cities and our towns in that way. Whether or not a single tourist comes here, those of us even living here, we also deserve that kind of environment. There's a gentleman called Simon Anholt. He's the leading authority on nation branding right now. And he has something they call a city branding index. And they use it like 6 dimensions, marketing people like all kinds of P's and R's and dimensions and so on. Now, one of the key areas they look at is the quality of outdoor space and transportation. So, for example, if you have walking pavements that have not been turned to street markets, if you have green places where children can play, where lovers can take a walk, where you can just go and lie down and read, and so on and so on, and you have lawns in the town and green belts in the town, and so on and so on, it gives the city a certain better quality and a certain better appeal. Now we have to realize that all these 195 or so countries in the world, everybody is telling the rest of the world that come to my country, I'm in a nice place. Watch CNN.
Yes.
Malaysia, truly Asia, incredible India, all kinds of things like that. But the quality of your country makes your marketing message reasonable, sensible, credible or not.
Absolutely.
I mean, if we spend all the money in the world and say, come to Ghana, lovely country, and you come and it's all, like you rightly said in the introduction, a concrete jungle, it's not so pleasant. So we need to focus on that. It looks like landscaping culturally, it looks like an Obroni thing. I mean, look at where do you find people with good landscape? I mean, look at the Mormons. Right. Everywhere they build a church. Excellent. Now, the good example is Yamransa Junction. If you know Ghana quite well.
That's right.
I mean, look at all those houses there. But the Mormons come from wherever they come from. They put up a beautiful house and its landscape in the same climate, in the same weather conditions. Look on the Independence Avenue. How come they can water their thing and keep it like that? So I think it's a mindset we must do. I mean, we build walls, maybe it's not good for us, but people have green spaces behind their wall, and they don't even bother to trim it, and so on. So, like he said, it's a mind thing. But I think those who've had the benefit of seeing how have pleasant, a well-organized, well-landscaped, well-manicured environment can be, should take the lead in doing that. And I'm sure our friends in town planning also, if they probably had control of all the spaces, and I say probably have control because we know the problems that are land tenure system in this country, and could design our cities that way, we'd have much healthier lives. Sometimes when you travel out for a while, you get stressed just coming from the airport to your house. You know what I'm saying?
Once you step in,
yes.
But beyond that, fine, priority, mindset and everything. For me, and I believe to several others, there hasn't been any serious and sustained national discourse to push forward this agenda. And so, if you don't push it, if you don't make a public discussion, the mindset will not be changed. So who would take that step in ensuring that we change the mindset through a sustained public discourse? Because look, it's been receded to the background.
Thank you, Ni. Coming from the Department of Parks and Garden background, I want to believe that the department should serve as a lead agency. One thing I've realized is that we don't have a national horticultural policy. So that is why we have all these disorder in our system. So one of the priority areas that I want to look at is to champion the development of a national horticultural policy. I believe that if we are able to develop this policy, we bring on board all the major stakeholders in that industry, we will be able to at least have a focus.
That's right.
That when we are moving, we all know that we are moving towards this direction. Until we do that, we will not be able to get anywhere. And I believe strongly that if we come out with the policies and leave it just like that, it means that we better go to sleep.
That's right.
We need to develop a very strong enforcing agency that has the legal backing to be able to enforce the laws that comes out of the policy.
That's right.
Other than that, we'll not be. So it's a priority area for my department that we need to come out with a national horticultural policy.
I'll follow up on that briefly. When the Parks and Gardens realized that it is a priority now, they want to move that area. But before then, can we evaluate or assess, the impact of Ghana's natural vegetation and green infrastructure on its environmental development and jobs industry? Have we made any impact so far? And what do we see, Alasan? Parks, town and country planning, right? You're also a stakeholder.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me say that we have a wide range of standards as far as greenery is concerned. And typically in urban and regional design, or town and country planning, typically, on paper and ideally, you find all of these things.
I see.
And let me start by saying that when you talk of green infrastructure, we talking of a wide range of green spaces, starting from floodplains and wetland areas through to urban development green spaces, these green wedges you provide to separate one town from the other or neighborhood from the other, to urban parks. You talk of botanical gardens, talk of zoos, you talk of corridor open spaces on our highways. All of this put together constitute the subject matter we're talking about. Now, if you read around, and with the subject matter of climate change with us, there is every indication that the green spaces are shrinking day in, day out. It is very visible because it is not enough to, let's say, provide for these things in plants, which we do provide, but they have to be owned and developed. You see,
by who?
Well, we have institutions that have mandates. The Town and Country Plan Department does not develop parks. So if it's a protected area in a city, like Achimota Forest, then the Forestry Commission has to be in charge.
But what role do you play?
we provide for these spaces, we delineate and determine where we think should be preserved for what kind of green utility. And so all of these types of green spaces I have enumerated, typically we provide for. But what I'm saying is that these spaces have been orphaned for a long time. Nobody owns them. So that space, if it's in a city center, has a very high value. And so there's a temptation for the owner of that land to want to push to allocate it to somebody who wants to use it for another purpose other than the green space, for which nobody has even shown up to acquire. And so let me say, for example, that if we need green space, like is done elsewhere across the world, you find city authorities even acquiring built-up areas, demolishing them, and planting their grasses and trees.
That's right.
But what we do here is conveniently, we've heard about DCs cutting just small forest areas in their to build offices.
That's right.
And yet this is the local government authority that is supposed to actualize all the discussions we have in here. Now, in our permitting process, for example, for you to build your house, we typically would provide that you plant no less than 3 trees in your property.
Is it part of bylaws? Is it a law?
Yeah, you have them in, in a number of bylaws you would find these things. But it's a classical provision in our permitting regime, which is there. But let me be quick to admit that once these things are done, the follow-up mechanism is quite weak or absent, because part of the reason is the lack of consciousness. The very officer who is supposed to follow through and ensure that you are required to have at least 3 trees or green plants in your house does not even see the value. I mean, intrinsically, the person doesn't have that feel.
He's detached.
So they forget. And that is why...
This is quite interesting information.
That is what it is. And so I want us to... So all ends with the way the local government operations happen, the district, metropolitan and municipal assembly. Because all that we're discussing here ends up, at their doorstep. They have to, we have officers, at all those levels that, have to implement those things. So my conclusion is that, yes, we've done well as far as the paperworks are concerned, but I wouldn't say that we've done well in developing this green infrastructure, because if we had done well, we would have all seen them. But we haven't seen them. And the figures tell us that we continuously are getting warmed up, which if we had these green spaces to balance the ecology, to sequester carbon and so on and so forth, you wouldn't have, a build-up of these undesirable circumstances that we have. So we just have to move on. I am not sure if the way to confront it is whether to go the policy formulation way or any other way. But what I am sure can be done is that whoever is in charge of any space where a green facility has been provided has to protect it. But the incentive to protect it has to be there. Because if his grandfather left him just this piece of land, and then with the mandate we have, we determine that in the plan that your land is a green space, you can't build there. Your right to have sold the land or developed it and earn some money should be taken care of.
Absolutely so.
If that is not taken care of, you would go heaven and earth to make use of that land in the way you desire, whether lawfully or unlawfully. And that is where we find ourselves.
Okay. Additionally, to
add up becoming more complex.
To add up to what you just said, often at times we look up to central government, and I can tell you on authority that central government has more than it can handle on its table. So I would advocate that the Australian public policy will tell you that we need to move from government to governance. What do we mean by moving from government to governance?
Okay.
We need to bring on board non-government state actors, like the private sector,
yes,
the mass media, to embark on this program, the program of creating the awareness that we need these green spaces. We need to develop these things so that together and holistically we can embark on these things. For instance, look at the financial institutions that we have in this country. We have, I, for instance, have written officially to Town and Country Planning asking for that data, the open spaces, right from the capital across the country, so that we make it a policy that we start developing the open spaces, at least 2 from Accra. I'm in the discussion with the UN Habitat to support us. If we are able to start this one, I believe that it will serve as a model that could trickle down, down the value chain.
Yeah.
But the problem is that you said, oh, it is government that has to do. But look at the telcos. Look at the financial institution. They have a lot of, excuse me to use the word, they are prepared to go into certain ventures that will not benefit society, because that is where they will get their promo. They will prefer to go into the beauty pageant industry to the detriment. If, for instance, I develop a paper and I put before a telco that, oh, I want to develop this park and name it Telco A Park, they'll tell me that is not their priority because it's more into politics. When I was at the National Peace Council, for instance, we were looking for support to create the awareness that people need to move away from this political violence. Yes. You contact these agencies and they tell you, no, our policy is that we don't have to go into politics. But if you don't create the enabling environment, if you don't have that place, how could your business thrive?
That's right.
So these are some of the things that we need to do. We need to bring on board the private sector, because all the things that we see out there in Europe and other advanced countries, they don't come easily. It's the private sector that helps the state institutions.
So these are valuable, very valuable submissions you're making. So what has kept us from starting something till today?
Well, if I may come in.
Yes.
I believe we are not starting from today. We've started long ago.
And what have we achieved?
Over and over again.
And
I believe it's the sustainability of these programs that's ended us where we are.
Okay.
If you look back, during the 50th anniversary, quite a lot of trees were planted across the country. But if you
that was it?
Yeah, quite a lot of trees were planted. But if you visit where they were planted today, you probably not even identify the stumps of these trees. But it's one thing planting. It's another thing somebody maintaining it and seeing
another
it
thing
grow.
DC is cutting them down.
So I believe that as we discussing and going along with coming out with a policy, these are the areas that we also need to identify, so that we just don't say we're going to develop a green area. Develop it for whom? Who is going to be responsible for its upkeep? Because it costs money to do all those things.
And also, additionally, I think the issue of monitoring and evaluation, that's a big problem in our public policy planning.
Okay.
Because we come out with the nice ideas. We want to embark on this green environment, blah, blah, blah. Writing the policy, perfect. But when it comes to implementation, like he said, Ghana at 50, we saw a lot of trees being planted across the length and breadth of this country.
It was beautiful.
But what happened to it? We all went to sleep. And now, 10 years down the lane, when you go, what do you find? So it has to do with monitoring and evaluation. And if you don't have a very strong monitoring and evaluation unit, believe me, all that we are doing will go waste.
Ben, you want to come in here?
Yes.
Before you do, let me announce our lines again, WhatsApp and SMS lines. 0261783382 is the number, 0261783382. We're discussing the creation of a national green infrastructural development policy, and discussion has so far been very revealing and insightful. Ben, come in here. Yeah.
No, I don't think we should fold our arms in despair. And I'm a little, how do I say it?
Say it.
You know, what's the point in having a town plan, you know, and not follow the plan? It may not be the responsibility of the town planning department to ensure that things are enforced. But public institutions responsible somehow must execute their mandate. So if, and there could be creative ways around it. If, for example, there was some kind of a name and shame arrangement, the town planning tells us that the best district that has followed the lay-down plan is South Lugunanton, for example. Public, we all know. You know, the way we say best farmer and so on, the best DC who has money, you know, then...
And the best district, even now,
yes, no,
that's the best district.
You know, because we can't continue to have excuses and continue to live in this, you know, stuffy, problematic environment where nothing happens. If you don't drink or you don't like going to the bars, and you are a young man with a young lady and you are courting, Ghana, Accra is a most unfriendly place. There's nowhere to sit to talk. Absolutely no place.
And that's why they go into rooms,
you know, and we can't live like
that.
that. So I think that if the plans are made, then those who flout the planning rules, there must be some sanction somewhere. I don't know who should enforce the sanction.
There should be.
But it must be there. It must be. I went to the Seychelles last April, and I was told by somebody in authority that if you cut down a tree without permission, you went to jail for 15 years. That was the law.
That's it.
And anybody who has gone to say, small, tiny country, 100,000 or so people. Very small. Very, very small. Green everywhere. You know, and the only difference is that laws work. You know, so I think sometimes we should be a little more forceful.
You know the Star story.
Because from where I come from, I mean, from the job I do, it's most frustrating if you can't present a country you're proud of. You know, you go and visit your friend, say in Namibia. He comes here and you have to properly plan your route. You do Legon, you know, airport, you dodge the rest of the town, you take them in the evening.
For you.
Because it's like, with all the noise you make as Ghana, is that the Ghana you have? You know, so I think we should push more and build, of course, the consciousness building and so must happen. But those who flout the laws, they must face the consequences.
It looks like Kakum is giving us some sort of consolation, but even the story is not... it's not nothing to write home about. Yes. So it comes back to, if you like, monitoring and evaluation of whoever is supposed to have oversight responsibility over that place, and also priority and all that. Kakum is going down the drain. Joseph.
You are quite right. Last June, I got some visitors from the U.S., and I've hyped Kakum so much, so they wanted to see Kakum.
You hyped it? Okay.
So, yes, I organized to take them there and be a tour guide myself. We got to Cape Coast. When we turned on that route, going to Kakum, my God, I regretted for everything I've told them. Because they were not just potholes, but manholes. And sometimes you have to stop to decide which of the manholes to fall into.
You can choose.
You can choose. Additionally, the communication. As we drove along, I wanted to find out how far we were from the site. There was no signage, nothing to tell you how far Kakum canopy is from the road. So we kept going, and sometimes I thought I was lost. I'll stop and ask. Yes, and I've been there a few times, but the driving was such a torture that I lost even concentration as to the distance I had to go. So I got the impression that, as I said somewhere in the animal farm, we are interested in receiving but not giving. Somebody is responsible for that piece of road. Income is being generated on the park, but not investment. Nothing is being done to ensure that you travel comfortably to enjoy the facility that exists there.
Mohammed, same applies to Ivory Botanic Gardens. What happened? What's happening? Is it under
well,
under you?
Yeah,
because great. What is happening, Nee?
To be frank with you, the park currently is in a very deplorable state, and I can tell you on authority that plans are far advanced.
That's a politician story.
Yeah, no, I'm not a politician, but coming from that background, I can tell you that plans are far advanced. We so far have the 2 proposals on the table. Government has given us a green light through the cabinet approval to put it on the PPP. And in the near future, let's take it, in the near future, a good news will come out.
Near future, as in we are in January now, almost February, near future.
Yes, maybe by the end of this first quarter or second quarter, we should get some good news on that.
End of June.
Yeah,
that's right, sir.
Yeah.
And talking about good news, I think you recently heard that the mayor of Kumasi has developed a Ratri Park in front of the Golden Tulip. Now, if you go there, it's a world-class place. And
sustenance.
And this initiative came from the mayor. And I've lived in Kumasi for quite some time. He had so much opposition from the assembly people, because in their minds, you know what I'm saying?
Kind of mentality.
You know, so if the leadership comes at the local government level, and there's that appreciation that this has impact, you know, people, you know, so on and so on and so on, we will move much further. And along the same lines, I know for a fact that the Minister of Tourism is taking a similar initiative with a children's park, and very soon you will see a transformed Ifwa Sutherland Park. You know, at least that space is there.
Very soon, as in, give me some.
You know, this country, we have to be careful about deadlines. You know what I'm saying?
because this platform, we don't live without, you know, any timeline.
No,
because we must follow it through and through.
Before the end of the year.
Because the talk has been so much.
No. This one I know for a fact. I know how far we've gone. On the children's park.
He's been closest. I mean, second quarter at least. So Ben, tell us something.
Oh, before the end of the year, you see.
Oh, that's too far.
Well, how should I tell you something faster than the timeline? you know.
Ben, can I ask?
Yeah, please ask.
We did submit a drawing for your minister's consideration.
Ever
since we did that, we haven't had any
good platform. Respond to it. Ben.
I can't talk for the minister here because you haven't gone to ask him where you're drawing when, have you?
No, it's the gender ministry.
That
falls on the agenda.
I know, but we are taking the initiative. It's been with gender for how many centuries, and it's still in that state. That is why, as Ministry of Tourism, we are bulldozing our way to get it properly done.
So,
you know,
but don't you think that
this is the initiative of Honorable Elizabeth Osajai?
Don't you think it should be an initiative which should be driven by the Department of Parks and Gardens?
We haven't ruled anybody out in the management. We are not going to manage the park. We are not park managers, but we are taking the trouble to get it in a shape that will be tourist friendly and uplift the city and all, you know. So you're welcome to come.
Then I'll come and see you so that we'll collaborate.
We need to see results.
Please, if I may, sorry.
Okay.
I was also going to take the Parks and Gardens on, because this Aburi project has, for the past 4 or 5 years, been online. The traditional council was interested. I remember some people even came from UK to also have a look at it. And each time you send a proposal, it was receiving attention, but that attention had never come.
No, that is where the problem is.
Thank you very much. As indicated earlier on, this is my 6th month in that department. I took over in June. July, second week in July. So I can tell you that from what I have seen and what the actions that I have seen on the ground, just 2 weeks ago, we had that technical review committee meeting to evaluate the proposals that we've had on table. And all things being equal, we submit our reports, and we believe that looking at the speed at which the politician wants that thing to see the light of day, I want to believe that it will not be long.
Let me
before you come in, I just want to say that these are isolated examples, but the bigger, do I say, the bigger strategy to get our town planning code followed, such that we can subsequently develop a more cohesive, coordinated
harmonization.
It's necessary.
Yeah, you know, it really is. Yes,
Mohammed. I think we need solutions now.
Yes. You have them?
No. There are various institutions with mandates that touch on greenery.
Yes.
So you have the forestry department. You have the national land policy. You have the youth policy, which talks about these spaces.
Yes.
And then you have the roads and highways, urban roads. Because when we provide for these road reservations, included in these are planting areas, green areas. And then you have the parks and gardens and the tourism ministry. But like he said, everybody is just doing something which doesn't add up to anything good. Nobody is playing a leading and coordinating role. But I am sure that
it means nobody is supervising anybody.
Yeah, somebody has to be in charge. And moving on from here, I think that's what has to happen. If I sit on the table with my colleague from the roads and highways, from the forestry and so on and so forth, then in a coordinated fashion, we can provide for it's not even late. When we prepare plans, there is a mechanism to revise them and provide for. And so that is what is important. What I'm not sure now is whether it's the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology, Innovation which should lead, because we know that every year we have World Environment Day, we go plant trees. If this tree planting was focused on at least reclaiming a park per year, would have done over 1,000 parks by now in the last. And so now, look at our national service and volunteering regime. I schooled somewhere, and by merely volunteering to pick seats in a cemetery somewhere in a park, I earn marks in school. Yeah, so there's no incentive for any national service person to say, look at Tete Kwashiri. I mean, since last week or 2 weeks ago, instead of clearing, watering them, somebody has been busily burning them. Whilst you have vehicles lined up in there, and the fire service did not see it as an emergency situation to come and put off the fire. So you have all of these factors playing out and making it impossible for us to see what we want. So to me, simply that's what we have to do. I don't want to belittle what efforts the various institutions are doing. We're all doing something, but we need. If you go to the U.S., I think they have the parks, national parks, something.
Park service.
So it's clear who is leading and in charge of all of this. In Ghana, who is in charge? I know that the spaces in the utility corridors, if you have high tension lines running, and people are farming cabbage or something, or green, it's VRA, which means VRA has to be there. But I think that somebody has to be at the top, pulling these cables together and giving direction as to what to do, how to revive them, how to create new ones. Because like I have said and he has emphasized, it's not enough to simply provide for them in the plans. Providing for green space is not going the traditional way of earmarking a place and say this is green space. Like I said, if you have a pipeline running from Pong to this place and you have all that reservation, what is it for when the pipe is underground? All that surface area is preserved, and it's a green, linear corridor path, that you can have, some trees planted here and there. You have all these gas infrastructure, which are all claiming vast portions running across towns and cities and villages. And these are opportunities we can take, to kind of revegetate these areas and keep them green.
Mr. Nyako, what was your headache that pushed you to Busa for support?
Well, it's just about what he's saying. Coming from the private sector, it becomes very frustrating when you have to deal with a project involving a green area, as you said. You go to one area is for parks and gardens. Another area is highways. Another area is VRA. So you keep going around not knowing who is doing what. And that is why we decided that we put this together, the greenery policy, and have, if possible, a coordinated kind of institution that will be responsible for the management of these green areas, so that if you have to develop or do some business in there, you know where to go and have answers to your problems. The Achimota Park has been there for all these years. You don't know who is directly responsible. You go to wildlife, they tell you is this, you go here, it's another institution. So our problem is dealing with a number of known and unknown institutions responsible for supposedly
very frustrating. Very frustrating.
That's why we are in here to see if it's possible through the infrastructure greenery program, develop a policy guideline where there is a body responsible, identifiable for projects of that nature.
Would you therefore say that the BUSAC fund support is useful?
It's been very useful. It's very useful. Without that, maybe you cannot even come and sit here. It's helped us to make contact with other institutions, which normally would have been difficult for us to do. So we believe that it's useful and they should do more. Until this greenery infrastructure is in place, they shouldn't leave us halfway through.
Let's open the door for the public to appreciate this one more time. What would be the overall benefits if we have a well-coordinated policy that harmonizes, you know, in the operations of all stakeholders to ensure that we move into one direction to make some gains out of greenery infrastructure in this country? Overall benefits. Each one of you will give us a feel them. Okay.
Okay, I'll start with the economic growth and investment. Wherever you see green environment, it adds value to the properties. So if we are able to develop these open spaces, it will add value to our cities, and it will serve as a means of creating jobs, because people will have to be employed in that industry. Then it also views as a natural landscape, can add up to property values. If you have your property close to a park, for instance, I saw the Rattray Park in Kumasi, and whoever's properties is adjoining to the Rattray Park, I believe by now will be smiling to the bank.
Very high.
Very high. So these are some of the things. And green spaces near workplaces reduce sickness, because when you are close to a green space, it brings some joy to you. At least when you are walking to your working environment, you feel. So at least if you are able to embark on these projects, it would lead to a whole lot of factors that would be of benefit to the state.
Ben, your bits on that, about 30 seconds. I'm getting round to
tourism. The main pillars of the tourism product are mostly natural and cultural things, you know, and okay, the big wildlife parks and so on, they are not a problem, but the quality of the environment, the cities and so on, are enhanced by how well we've planned and the number of green spaces for both those of us who are living here and people who will visit us. You know, so if we don't do that, then we are dropping on our competitive rankings, and we lose out in the long run.
You're right. The world's not waiting for us.
The aesthetic nature, where there is no hotel that hasn't got a nice landscaping around. And if you look at that, you spend more time outside the hotel than you spend in your room.
Tropics, you know, you need to be out.
So it enhances the project. It enhances the hotel, and I believe that we need it. Additional windbreaks. You know, every rainy season we hear of a school block that has been uprooted, all because these trees and plants are not there.
I see. Mohammed. Benefits.
Well, the general benefits also include making the youth healthy. If they have parks to play, you have spaces where excess rainwater can percolate and not flood us. You have benefits related to carbon sequestration, too much carbon in the air. Each tree, for example, can provide oxygen for about 40 people over about 1 month, and so on and so forth. So there are many that we can't finish mentioning. And visual amenity he spoke about, and protecting biodiversity, creating room for other living things. We are not alone on Earth. There are several that, you know, that live with us, and so we need to not wipe them off, because when we wipe them off, we suffer at the end, because we live in a chain. And so this is what I would say. If we can't finish listing the benefits, I must say.
So let me come to you, Ishmael. If you have to make 2 immediate recommendations to boost the development of the green infrastructure in Ghana, what would be the topmost 2?
One.
The topmost 2,
That one, we need to plan whatever we do. Because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And also, like my colleague said, we lead a lead agency. So all the various agencies need to come together and form a strong collaborative unit in whatever we do. Because we realize that often at times we find us doing things in piecemeal.
Sometimes overlapping.
Overlapping and creating all sort of confusion. So I believe that if we do these two things, we should be able to make a headway.
Wonderful. Ben, talk to the conditions.
I think once again, the workforce in the court of our municipal assistant chief, chief executive, they have a lot of work, we know. But the nature of our governance structure, they should still play their role. And I think every one of them must, either individually or one-on-one basis, must show that he is aware of the town planning of his area, of his district, and that has demarcated the green spaces. And then there should be some kind of a monitoring mechanism that shows that they are conforming to it.
That's right.
Yes.
Besides that, you also recommend punitive measures?
Well, if you break the law, because if you own the land, yes, it's your land, but you can't determine the use. The use is determined by town planning or whoever. So you must just follow what it is. But like he suggested,
that's right.
If you are going to lose economically, then there has to be compensation.
Absolutely.
There has to be compensation, definitely. And those ones we must work out, But you can't just arbitrarily, with impunity, decide what you do. I mean, 24 million of us cannot suffer because a few people think they should. That's not fair.
Mohammed, before I come to you, Mohammed, yes, talk to recommendations.
Talk to institutional restructuring for green space management. People would have to be incentivized to feel happy if they, maintain or sustain green spaces. We know green spaces are used as refuse dams and so on and so forth. People clear them. People despise green spaces, especially if you are coming from the rural area and you've seen enough of bush. You think to live big, to be a big person, is to see more concrete. That would have to be, it's in the subconscious part of most of us. And that accounts for what we see, pure water, plastics, all over. And then we burn them in the heart of I think all of that would have to be taken care of. But I think the incentive and the punishment balancing act would have to be done. So if you, on your birthday, decide that, this is so association, whether church group or whatever, you want to plant, and then you adopt a park, let's also pay you back in a certain way. Right. And then if you destroy them, you should be punished, whether directly or indirectly. And I think that is where our traditional authority come in. What has become of the sacred groves and all the reverence we give to greens? They are the first to now go and cut most of these green spaces. They have to be told. I don't know who does that, if it's the chieftaincy ministry. So when it comes to greenery, you see that almost the whole country would have to have some representation on the table.
Wonderful. Mr. Nyako, yes.
Well, I'll call for enforcement through education. Enforcement of what is existing, bylaws exist today, and education, because I believe there are a lot of people who do not even know that in my lawn I have written only dogs pass on lawns.
That's my school. I had master's mantra. Only goats walk on lawns.
Because they don't know, and for lack of knowing, my people perish. Let us educate them about the importance of this greenery. And I believe when we are able to bring them on board and they realize the importance of it, when the child comes to your house and is breaking the flower, the mother will pat him or her to stop. So let's enforce what we have now through education. And for that, we'll be able to bring them on board.
I see. So, Ben, you didn't give me any timeline yet. So you're talking about the end of the year.
Yes. That's if we're set on
Okay, we're being specific.
So end of the year means midnight, 31st December for your friends.
Okay. I want to say a very big thanks to all of you this evening. Many thanks to Mr. Ishmael Ejay Brown, Director at Department of Parks and Gardens, for time this evening. Many thanks to you also, Mr. Ben Anane Insia, Events Manager, Ghana Tourism Authority. And tons of appreciation to you, Mr. Joseph Nyako, Ghana Tourism Federation, GHATOF, for your time. It's been wonderful having you here. And also, Appreciations to you also, Mr. Mohammed Al-Hassan, Principal Town Planning Officer, Town and Country Planning Department. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. So it's been another edition of the Business Advocates brought to you by the Business Fund in collaboration with the GBC and GJA. And the discussion has been on creation of a national green infrastructure development policy. So we come away again next week, Thursday. It's a good evening, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Then, of course, we're coming to Accra, Ghana.